It's interesting figuring out their reasons because they're always pretty well rationalized. They always have like, well, when you come from the bottom like me, this is what you got to do. And so it's just business. They've seen it. Their uncles were doing it. Their brothers were doing it, yada, yada. So it's not really, I haven't met one guy that's like, I know this is a crazy business. I know it's kind of bad. I don't know if I can say this early on in the episode, but a guy cooking and Miguel, all of us were in like this. We were getting a little scared. So we just kept like this the whole time.
Play a little Fetty Wap in the background.
We were doing it.
That's it. What's it like to cook? What does that look like?
He kind of just, what was it, he just threw baking soda into a little pitcher, and then he got a pot, heated it up.
If you listen to a few Young Jeezy songs, you know how to make it. Okay. You get the Pyrex on the pot, you whip it up. It makes it sound like it's such like a cool, like, I'm whipping up the pot, and then you really are like, oh, I'm cooking it. So that we were in some old guy's apartment. He was using one of his customers' houses, and there was some old guy that was just on the couch smoking, and you're just like, this is a bit unusual.
How do you source one like that?
I put it on my story looking for a house ASAP, gloves, ski mask, sunglasses, sleeves, and then within about 15 minutes we had like 10 leads.
You had 10 leads.
Yeah.
How many cities?
I specified for Boston and Lawrence, so we had a fine tooth comb. And then you got to figure out from their picture, like when it's like finesse flexor 207, and like their pictures all like them flexing cash. You're like, yeah, that's probably a good bet. So you start to like, you can pick up the profile, like even the like profile description is like long live Trey. You're like, oh yeah, that might have been it too.
What's the like when you go into something like that though? We talked about this last time when you made videos like the most dangerous hood and shit like that. But like, are you ever afraid, even at this point? Like, oh, I may be going in somewhere where bullets may start flying.
Something we were talking about in the car ride home yesterday is we've gotten desensitized, but it's kind of like this. If me and you go outside and see a gunshot victim, we're like, oh my gosh, there's a gunshot. It's a gaping chest wound. Like, but if an emergency room doctor sees it, it's like, yep, okay, get the gauze, get the gloves, we're going. So it's kind of like that. We've done enough of these operations that we're not nearly as scared as we should be. But like the reason we were talking about it is the dealer, we asked him, have you ever unalived a customer? And he's like, yeah, I went to this lady's house and she just kept buying. I kept serving. Like she kept buying. And then I knew she was on her last dose. So I gave it to her. And then I just walked out and she, unalived later that day.
Oh my God.
And I'm just, like that should have been like a stop and me like, what did you just say? But we're just like, oh yeah, next question. Like it wasn't like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking to people that have a whole different understanding of reality than you do. And yet you're in here doing these stories all the time. So like you get where they're coming from, but there's a disconnect there because it's like you're there to document, but you would never, I would imagine you could never imagine yourself being in the middle of that.
It's interesting figuring out their reasons because they're always pretty well rationalized. They always have like, well, when you come from the bottom like me, this is what you got to do. And so it's just business. They've seen it. Their uncles were doing it. Their brothers were doing it, yada, yada. So it's not really, I haven't met one guy that's like, I know this is a crazy business. I know it's kind of bad. It's all like all guys that want to hustle to the point where they can go legal. Hey, I need enough money so I can buy a truck and start a trucking company, or I'm launching this or I'm launching that. They all have kind of a dream of going legal, but first they got to hustle a little bit to get there.
And then they get stuck in that loop.
And
then they never want to get rid of it.
Or they go to prison before they make the money. But the thing is, what are you going to do? Get a duffel bag full of $100K in your apartment and just hope that no one steals it, hope that it's going to... So then, yeah, there's this dream and they kind of think this is my only way to really get out of it. And then that inevitably puts shackles on their life. And, but you like, I don't know, it was like you think like this is an evil person. This is a bad person. Then you talk to him and it's like,
they seem evil in the moment. And then after he's like, hey, Tommy, can I get a picture? I'm a huge fan.
Right.
Like he's super chill, normal kid.
Yeah. Like when I had Brian McMonagle in here, Bill Cosby's lawyer, Meek Mill's lawyer, really high-powered defense attorney. He talks about that because he represents a lot of guys who, he won't say it, but objectively, they murdered motherfuckers and shit. Like, these are bad people. But he'll talk about these little moments of humanity that he'll see from them that makes it, like, worth it to defend them. And I don't know, the way he puts it is similar because it's almost like there's these moments or these places that they can be. Maybe in this case, it takes being around a documentary film team for them to, like, step outside of their reality for a minute and be a normal person. But then the minute that you leave or you're not there, or the minute, like, Brian McMonagle's not in the room with them, they're back to whatever it is. That's really like a sad cycle to me to see that happen.
I think a lot of these guys are good if you took them to a different environment with different opportunities, different education. But they say product of your environment, and it's so true. But the thing is, I don't see the way out of it. What do you guys think?
It's just a cycle. I don't think it'll end. I mean, I don't think it'll ever end.
Yeah, it's tough to say because I feel like a lot of times when you talk to him, like, yeah, you do see the humanity in him. You're like, yeah, like, hey, if you just grew up in a different environment, you know, you'd probably be running a business or working at a bank, but instead you're
at the same you want to have, like, you know how much personal responsibility matters, so you don't want to let them off the hook. And, like, it's kind of just like, how are none of the guys in your crew being like, yo, this is a little bit like you just serve that person until they die, dude? Like, what are you doing? There's no one there to check them because it's like, well, I'm in the same rat race you are. Oh, you made 3 bands? Nice, dude.
It's like they've been around that their whole life. I mean, like Miguel, because you came on board, what, a couple years ago, filming everything for Tommy? What had you filmed anything like the stories that Tommy's doing before you worked with him?
Before Tom, I would film a lot of, like, rap music videos. Okay. And maybe you're familiar with Washington Heights here.
Of course.
So I'd film there. And any other trenches around here you would be familiar with now. But, yeah, like, I'd go down there at 11 o'clock at night by myself with someone else to help me with, like, a tripod. And then, so when I came with, I mean, Keegan was already filming at the time, too. So when I came with these two guys, and, like, he's jacked, he knows how to fight. Right. Nobody's going to Tommy G, you know what I mean? So I was more safe when I was showing up with 2 other people.
Yeah, so, wearing a bulletproof vest with a big press thing on it. You'll be all right. And what about you, Keegan?
No, I didn't even film really much prior to working with Tom. I had just left my job to go full time into real estate, and just had the, free time to film, and it was a culture shock because I was going from just a, super suburban upbringing, and just a pretty normal corporate world to filming the wildest things on
houses.
Yeah, houses.
How do your parents feel about some of these subject matters?
Not a fan. No, my mom's occasionally a bit frightened of where we're going.
Yeah.
Keegan, so we sent him on one of his first solo missions. He stayed with these guys, the Black Israelites, in Harlem.
Oh, that was you doing
Yes.
that.
Yeah, that was me.
Sorry, I was out of town. You're supposed to hang here.
It's all good.
Anytime you guys need a crash here, that was it was my best friend getting married. Anytime you guys, we got space.
Appreciate you. So we send him into the mix, and on paper it's like, it's this group that hates white people, and you're sending Keegan. My wife was like, what are you doing? You're sending him alone there? And he didn't even tell his mom where he's going.
Yeah.
What were they like? And can you tell people who they are?
Yeah.
More than what Tommy just said?
So the Black Israelites, they're, you look them up, the first thing it's going to pop up, it's like SPLC, ADL. It's like hate group.
Right.
And so
predictable.
Pretty predictable. And so, he's like, I'm, pretty white, and so I'm going into it like, yeah, if you couldn't tell from the camera. And I'm like, it's a hate group, but I'm also going there with a camera, and maybe I'm just a fool for thinking that the cameraman never dies, but
well, did they treat you well, because you're there documenting? It's almost like you're different. You're not just some random white guy on the street. They're like, oh, it's like they give you give you the token pass for the day. No?
Yeah, no, I was the token white guy.
They like Keegan a lot. So when we showed up, there's no parking in New York, obviously. So they're in a park. They're in this giant circle, all wearing black boots, like leather cuffs, like 80s action figures, and they're doing push-ups. Their first day of Hebrew camp. And
Hebrew camp.
Yes. And we couldn't find a parking spot. So it's like, okay, Keegan, he parked. Me and Miguel go there, like, where's Keegan? And like they really wanted to see Keegan, and they actually felt pretty comfortable. Like, oh, Keegan's over there. Okay, good. And I just feel like all the people we could have sent to, like a guy named Keegan is probably one of the whitest people you can send. And they really liked this because also they weren't afraid to laugh, especially Captain Tazariak was our main guy that we were talking to.
Captain Tazariak.
Yeah, Captain
Sounds like
T-
a real straight shooter.
Yeah, Captain T. It was so fun because like. So I'm like, okay, let's get to the chase here. Like, you guys want to enslave white people? He's like, yeah, you kind of deserve it. And so I was calling him massa and doing push-ups and stuff. And I'm like, what kind of slave activities would you have me do? Like, am I going to be a house honky or a field honky? And they were still thinking of the chores I'd be responsible for, but they promised to be a nice massa.
You were calling him massa.
I was doing push-ups like, hey, Massa, can I go get a water break? Just to show how ridiculous their thinking is, you know? And it was almost like you'd ask them certain things and be like, okay, but you really think, so black Jesus is going to come back and everyone's going to be enslaved from whites, Chinese, Japanese, but Latinos are in their group. Native Americans
You're
are in
all
there.
right.
Yeah.
I'm
So
all good.
Yeah.
Miguel is the only guy that can officially join them.
Miguel's gonna whip us one day.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.